The Royal Ponyville Orchestra. Day 2. Nightmare in Ponyville. Morning came far too quickly for my tastes, but then if I had my way, I would have thrown Equestria into eternal night as opposed to ever going to Ponyville. Unfortunately, I doubt Princess Luna would be receptive to that idea. When the sun had finally risen, Princess Luna came to my apartment to banish all hopes of a last-minute reprieve and make sure I wasn't about to flee. I had seriously considered the idea last night, but the only plan I came up with that allowed me to stay in Canterlot involved me hiding in this city's seedy underbelly and forging as a for-hire cellist who plays for any pony if the price is right. At least in Ponyville I could maintain my standards. I know I said this before, but you should enjoy your time in Ponyville. It might not be as refined as Canterlot, but there are good ponies there, and the town has more to offer than most ponies would initially believe, the princess said as we left my old apartment for the final time. Please, you make it sound like I'm missing something in Canterlot. I enjoy the city, I go out to socialize when I feel so inclined. I have plenty of lovely acquaintances in Canterlot who are more than happy to see me on the occasions I feel compelled to visit them. You said acquaintances, not friends, Luna said as we walked down the streets of Canterlot, heading towards the royal castle. And? The words are synonyms, I said. What in Equestria does my word choice have to do with anything? And I really don't see why it's important that I socialize and make friends. My work is all I need. Luna laughed at that. I suppose you will have to discover the difference between a friend and an acquaintance for yourself, Octavia. And as for the latter, it is my experience that friends can make the absolute darkest of days endurable. We walked in silence for this rest of the trip as I thought on her words. Did I spend most of my days in my apartment practicing? Yes. Was it possible that my tireless pursuit of perfection had isolated me from most of my peers? Certainly, but it was precisely that dedication that had allowed me to become the respectable musician I was today. I had spent most of my entire life alone and was quite happy that way. On the other hand, if a close social network did make terrible situations slightly more tolerable, then I might need to cultivate them after I arrive in Ponyville. Finally, we reached the castle courtyard, and I realized we had walked right past the train station. I don't understand, why are we over here when the train is on the other side of Canterlot? I asked. Oh, I have arranged for you to take one of the flying chariots into Ponyville. It won't do for the princess's emissary to take the train, Luna said, winking. If I had to go to Ponyville, arriving by flying chariot would at least take away some of the sting. Luna flew with me to Ponyville. Still thought I would run for the hills at the first possible chance despite my insistence to the contrary. Octavia, I have taken the liberty of securing your lodgings once we reach Ponyville. You will be staying with a roommate and living next door to Lyra Heartstrings. I believe you've heard of her? I nodded my head. The mayor had graduated from Celestia School for Gifted Unicorns around the time I first moved to Canterlot, and quickly developed a reputation as one of the best lyre players in Equestria. Nobility from across the land had asked her to play at their functions, but she had never accepted their invitations. Recently, she had completely faded from view in Canterlot, and most ponies assumed she had cracked under the pressure. The princess continued. Your roommate is one vinyl scratch, a fellow musician and a good friend of Miss Heartstrings. I expect the two of you to get along famously. I groaned. This is beginning to sound like the entire situation was orchestrated to get me to make friends. Please tell me the royal princesses of Equestria have more important things than to ensure ponies make friends. I would never do that. She paused and tilted her head. Although, I hope you will forgive me for heading back to Canterlot early. Before I could respond, Luna flapped her wings and headed back off towards Canterlot, leaving me alone on a flying chariot with a sinking feeling in my stomach. I laughed and shook my head, recalling what my psychologist, Dr. Hoofs, told me about my fear that ponies were out to get me. Some time later, the chariot landed, and I stepped hoof in Ponyville, strapped my cello to my back, and trotted off to the town center to find my lodgings, as the princess forgot to give me the address before she took off. I walked around the town and found myself pleasantly surprised by the town's quite rustic aesthetic. I could easily see a tortured genius coming here to write or compose in the hopes of getting away from the busy city life. Perhaps the fresh country air will help me clear my head and compose a brilliant symphony so that when I finally make my triumphant return to Canterlot, I will be hailed as a visionary genius and Mr. Pianissimo will be exposed as a bigoted fraud. The thought was surprisingly comforting. As I walked down the town streets, I felt the feeling of eyes on the back of my neck. The other denizens were going about their daily business, and most paid me no special attention other than the cursory glance, but the more I walked, the more the feeling of being watched grew. I shook my head. I was just being paranoid. The new environment must have gotten my imagination running. I had to repeat what the doctor told me. There was no pink pony plotting to ruin my life. There was no pink pony who served as a portent of doom. If there was, I would have seen her by now, I thought, laughing at my paranoia. "Excuse me," I said, approaching a magenta-colored pony with 3 smiling flowers as her cutie mark. "I am looking for a Miss Vinyl Scratch. I am to be her new roommate, but was not told where I would be living." The pony eyed me suspiciously. Apparently, she didn't believe a pony could be stupid enough to pack up her belongings and move across Equestria without first learning where exactly she would be living. To be fair, I didn't either before today. I certainly didn't think I would be capable of it. "You mean you moved all across Equestria and all you brought with you was that case?" "Oh, no. No, the rest of my possessions are being delivered by moving Pegasi. I just wanted to make sure my cello arrived safely." Her look of suspicion quickly melted into one of concern. "Tell me, did you happen to see the moving pony who packed up all your things?" I explained to her that I was forced to move on short notice, and that I had been out of the house when my things were being packed. "Oh, well, tell me," she said. "Did the moving boxes happen to have a muffin on them?" I nodded as I recalled the peculiar logo on the cardboard boxes. "Oh dear, you should probably head home as quickly as possible. Just go to Chestnut Street. It's your first ride after crossing the South Bridge," she said, pointing at a nearby bridge. "And it should be the 3rd house on your left, the messy one. And it would be for the best if you were there to check on the moving mare before she arrived." "Why, what is the problem?" I asked, wanting to know why muffins could inspire such a reaction from a pony. "Well, let's just say that the moving pony, she means well, but she has a bad habit of losing, misplacing, or otherwise destroying packages." I nodded my head at the helpful pony and trotted off in the direction she pointed at. With each step, the feeling of ice pouring into the back of my skull intensified, and I soon broke into a trot, sprinting across the bridge in hopes of evading my shadowy pursuer. After clearing the bridge, I turned my head over my shoulder to check for whatever had spooked me, and suddenly found myself staring into the icy blue eyes of infinity. It spoke in its ancient cursed tongue, and I fell over. From the ground I stared up at the sky as the thing moved to stare down at me, a deranged smile threatening to consume its whole face and its body coated in a violently unnatural shade of pink. It spoke again. It was the mirror from my nightmares. The mirror from the gala. "Ooh, miss, are you alright? All I did was say hello. Or is that how they say hello where you're from? By rolling over and pretending to be dead?" She, for this monstrosity was definitely female, quickly knocked herself over and mimicked my pose before jumping back up. "Have we met?" it continued. "You look familiar. I know I've seen you before." She stopped speaking and let out a loud gasp. "You worked at the Grand Galloping Gala, which means you live in Canterlot, but if you're here now, it means—" She ran off before she could finish the sentence, and I shuddered. The creature spawned from Tartarus remembered me. I have already alluded to my past experiences with the mare. It was she who ruined the gala, ruined the garden party, drove me to the brink of madness. For years I convinced myself that she wasn't real, that she was just a figment of my imagination, but now... I shook my head. This could just be another one of my outbursts, another episode brought on by severe stress. Or at least that's what I told myself as I picked myself up off the ground and continued the sprint to my new home, desperately ignoring all the evidence that said she was real and lived in Ponyville. I reached the house the magenta pony described and knocked on the door, gasping for breath. There was no answer. Knocking again. I heard movement coming from the house, and a minute later the door swung open. A mare with a coat that was either white or very light yellow looked out at me with eyes that were a vibrant shade of purple. She blinked. "Yes?" "I'm your new roommate. Have the moving ponies arrived yet? I said, gasping for breath. She gestured for me to come inside. No ponies have come by yet. Didn't expect you'd get here before I had a chance to have my morning coffee. I stepped inside the house as she shut the door. It's 1 in the afternoon. Yeah, I know. Can't believe you got here this early. You must have gotten up at like 9 in the morning. Actually, I said, following the pony into the kitchen as she started brewing her coffee. My cherry had left Lotta at precisely 6:30. I was up an hour before that. My new roommate stared at me, eyes widening as she let out a shocked gasp. Whoa, I think I was just getting to bed around that time. You must be like crazy tired. My roommate was one of those ponies who didn't think the day began before noon. Then again, perhaps parties in Ponyville tended to run late, and her odd hours were nothing more than a necessity of the job. If I'm going to follow the princess's request to make friends, though I still don't see the need, I will have to wait before passing judgment. After all, she might be a perfectly fine mare despite her odd hours. Actually, I said, I managed to get sleep around 10, so I don't feel too terrible. But I will love a cup of coffee if it's not too much of a bother. Oh yeah, sure, Vinyl said, levitating another cup out of the cupboard. I hope you don't want anything particularly fancy because I just have this coffee maker. I nodded my head. Whatever you have will be fine, I said, smiling graciously. I have had quite a few cups of coffee at Coffee Joe's when I have to stay up practicing for a recital. Even we musicians at the top have to save our bits now and then. There. Putting myself down on her level should assuage any anxiety she might have about a kennel-led pony coming to live with her and go a long way towards making us friends. Vinyl blinked as her smile slowly turned into a frown. Apparently she didn't feel the same way. Sorry, what were you trying to say? All I meant to say was that I know what it's like to struggle to get by. There were some very lean years before I got accepted into the orchestra. Yeah, I'm not exactly a broke musician struggling to get by. I make a decent living. My mind raced. The situation didn't go as well as I had hoped, and I needed to think of something that would remedy the situation. Of course, I just meant that a pony playing for Equestria's premier orchestra would make a bit more than a pony playing in Ponyville. I never meant to insinuate that you were poor. You probably make a decent living wage. Final Scratch went back to smiling. Oh, never mind then. I don't particularly care if a pony makes a few bits more than me as long as I get to go out and do what I love, she said as she put both cups of coffee down on the table. Although I gotta ask, how much does a fancy kennel-led musician make anyways? I let out a small sigh of relief. The crisis was seemingly averted. Truthfully, I only made about 240,000 bits last year. Enough to live on, but I won't be moving into Kennel-led Castle anytime soon. There! I had demonstrated humility while answering the question honestly and not flaunting my wealth. Vinyl Scratch burst out laughing. I didn't think my joke was that funny, I said, amused at how easily my new roommate, and dare I say it, future friend, was entertained. Oh no, it's not that, she said after regaining her composure. It's just that I made twice as much as you last year. She looked down at the floor for a second. And that was probably rude of me to say. I just found it funny that you were acting so elite and whatnot, and then turns out I am making way more money. She shrugged. Guess rich and powerful didn't get that way by being big tippers. I blinked. This? I've spent my entire adult life practicing on the cello in the hopes of being the best, and then it turns out some mayor from Ponyville makes twice what I do? Where's the justice in that? I was chosen to lead the Royal Ponyville Orchestra. Granted, that task might very well be impossible, and a performer in some tiny little backwater makes twice as much as me? I just have a salary. Those of us playing in the Candlewood Orchestra don't get tips, I said as I worked to steady my heart rate. Oh, well, if it makes you feel any better, I don't really make a salary. I just make tips and a small fee whenever Pinky has a party that she thinks needs a musician, which is just about every day, Vinyl said, trying to placate me as she took another sip from her coffee. Wait, I said, focusing on just one word Vinyl said. Pinky? Is that the pink pony that is very high energy and has 3 balloons for a cutie mark? I left out the fact that I thought she might have spawned in the deepest pits of Tartarus. That would have been rude. Vinyl nodded, and any hope I had that she was some figment of my imagination vanished. Yeah, have you met her already? She can come off kinda strong, but she's super friendly, and she'll probably be your main source of work when you're trying to... How did Luna describe it in her letter? Found the first Royal Ponyville Orchestra. She rolled her eyes. By the way, good luck with that. Great, even she knew my job wasn't possible. Why even bother trying at this point? I sat in silence, brooding over recent revelations as I finished off my coffee, which was burnt, by the way. So anyways, Vinyl said, trying to break the silence, I guess I should show you to your... Before she could finish her sentence, a gray-coated Pegasus flew through our wall. Mental note, find out why it is so easy for a pony to fly through our walls. Oh hey, she said, shaking the plaster and drywall off her coat. Are you the ponies whose stuff I am moving? 'Cause I've got some good news and some slightly less good news. She gestured to the cart that was hitched to her as she spoke. I sighed. What is the good news then? Oh, she said, her ears perking up at my question. The good news is I managed to save one of your boxes. I rested my head against my hoof. Is the bad news that the rest of my belongings were lost or otherwise destroyed? The pony moved a hoof up to scratch her head, and I finally noticed that her yellow eyes were unfocused, with one eye looking at me while the other just kind of stared off into space. It was unnerving. How'd you know? She asked. Are you psychic? No, I said. Just a very good guesser. Now what happened to the rest of my stuff? Well, I was flying your stuff all the way from Camelot, and since Princess Luna said it was a rush job, I thought I would fly over the Everfree Forest. Anyways, I was flying over the Everfree, and then there was this big storm. I flew around it, but I forgot the back of my cart wasn't secured, so most of your stuff is now scattered around the forest. Sorry. As I felt the weight of the cello strapped securely to my back, I thanked Celestia that I had the foresight to bring my livelihood with me. So what did you manage to save then? Well, she said, you will be pleased to know that your box of muffins survived the long and perilous journey. I sighed and pinched the bridge of my nose. I don't own a box of muffins. Oh, right, she said, as she unstrapped herself from the moving wagon to claim the box of muffins. In that case, want to have some muffins with me? I will let you have first pick. Get out. Wait, she said, don't you want me to help you unpack all of your stuff? No, I don't want your help, and I don't have any possessions to unpack thanks to you. What else could you possibly do for me? I could joke and say that any further assistance might destroy my house, but you already beat me to that, I said, gesturing to the hole she knocked in the wall. The only thing you can do to help me right now is get out of my house. The great Pegasus' eyes watered as she turned and flew away. I grabbed the box of muffins and threw them at her as she left. And take these with you! I stared at her as she flew away, positively fuming. A few seconds later, I felt a hoof tapping me on the shoulder. Hey, I know you're upset, but you really shouldn't take it out on Ditzy. She tries her best, Vinyl said. I fear that at this point I might have lost my temper. Her best just led me to losing a lifetime of possessions. Yearbooks, scrapbooks, pictures of my family and friends, years of journals and notes, Miss Minor, but apparently all that doesn't matter because the moving mare did her best. Well, her best just ruined me. Okay, who the hey is Miss Minor? Vinyl said as I stormed past her. She was the only thing I had to remind me of my grandmother. For a second, my anger wavered, and I felt the sting of tears in my eyes. If I lost my anger now, I would be absolutely useless for the rest of the day. With as much poise and decorum as I could muster, I walked out of the house and closed, or possibly slammed, the door. I had been in the town for less than 2 hours, and already things were worse than I expected. The pink nightmare was real, and she lived here. All of my possessions were lost and presumably destroyed, and the stupid roads in this town weren't even paved properly. Ponyville made the moon seem positively inviting by comparison, although I probably shouldn't mention that to Princess Luna whenever I speak to her next, unless I want to test that theory out firsthand. After leaving my new house, I headed around Ponyville looking for a shop that might possibly sell a journal and a few other necessities, which I finally found in the store called Journals and Toiletries. The proprietor's cutie consisted of a quill and a tube of toothpaste, making me question both how one discovers that their special talent is selling specifically journals and toiletries, and how one can make a sustainable business just by selling two completely unrelated items, especially when you give them away for free because a pony looks new in town, although I was grateful for his generosity even if it was an incredibly bad business move. At the very least, Luna was right when she said the town was exceedingly friendly. As soon as I opened the door, a chorus of ponies screamed, "Surprise!" as confetti rained down from the ceiling. Before I could fully comprehend what was happening, the pink one had popped out of nowhere, blotting out my field of vision. Did we surprise you, huh? Did we? Because when I saw you entering into town today, I thought, now there's a pony who looks like she could use some cheering up. And then I found out that you are new here and will be living with my favorite DJ in Equestria. Unless you are a DJ too, then I guess you're both my favorites. Anyway, I decided to get all my friends together, which is every pony, because every pony is my friend, and throw a welcome to Ponyville party at DJ Pon3's place. And while she was speaking, I noticed that Vinyl Scratch was in the corner, surrounded by speakers and a turntable thingy, blasting out some of the loudest techno music I had ever heard. Of course my roommate was a DJ as opposed to being an actual musician, and of course the pink one had decided to throw a giant party in my house, and not just any party, but a big loud obnoxious celebration with lots of drinking, lots of cake, lots of yelling, lots of dancing, lots of very loud noises, because I hesitate to call the sounds Vinyl was making actual music, because music does not offend the senses, while possessing absolutely zero good taste. And to top it all off, I was being subjected to one of the longest and least coherent rants to ever blight the ears of ponies. So anyways, I'm sure we will be the very best of friends, don't you think, buddy? She had finally finished speaking and had moved to staring at me expectantly. Did she actually think I would so easily forgive her after she ruined my career and paved the path for my exile in Ponyville? Or did she not even notice how she had upstaged to me at the gala and the garden party before ruining both events? In either case, I thought it was the proper time to tell the jubilant pony exactly how I felt. No! We are not best friends, we're not even friends. In fact, I would go so far as to say we are enemies. You ruined the gala, you ruined the garden party, you ruined two of the biggest performances in my career, I said, punctuating every "you" by jabbing a hoof at the pony, as her smile evaporated before my eyes. My entire career has been ruined thanks to you, and now you want to be my friend? We will never be friends, and do you want to know why? Because I hate you. I hate you more than I hate this stupid backwater town, and believe me, that I say quite a bit. When I finished, the pony's puffy hair had deflated and straightened itself out, and she ran out of my house crying. I would have laughed, but by that point, the music had cut out and every pony had turned to stare at me. Based on their very angry-looking faces, Pinky, was that what Vinyl had called her, might not have been lying when she said that every pony in town was her friend. Purple wings flared up near Vinyl's booth, and the ponies backed away to clear a path for an alicorn. Of course, Equestria's newest princess saw me verbally eviscerate a pony, and based on the look she was giving me, she counted Pinky as a friend of hers as well. I have to check on Pinky, but when I am done, we are going to have a nice talk, Miss Melody, she said before she and 4 other mares stormed out of my house. I'd like to say that I kept my calm under the angry stares of every pony in Ponyville, but that would have been a lie. I lasted about 1/10 of a second before bolting up the stairs and running into my room, which it turns out is not actually my room, but instead the room Vinyl stores all of her DJ equipment in. My room is presumably the last door on the left, but I fear that if I go outside I will be swarmed by an enraged mob, so instead I think I am going to hide here for the rest of the night, or quite possibly stay here until I starve to death, as it would be less painful than facing the angry scowls of the entire town. On the upside, after upsetting an entire town and royalty, I don't think I can reasonably expect things to get worse, and things can only go up from here.